So what is Nintendo's big plan? When can we see gameplay for the bigger Nintendo Switch games like Pikmin 4 and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 Tears of the Kingdom? And what about the next Nintendo Direct that will reveal more Nintendo Switch games for Nintendo 2023? And what about the Nintendo Switch Pro and Metroid Prime 4? In this video, we are going to try to figure out what Nintendo's big plan is for the next year or so based on what they've been doing so far and a little speculation added in. This includes Nintendo Directs, Metroid Prime 4, my thoughts on if Nintendo will do a Nintendo Switch Pro for Breath of the Wild 2, and more other cool Nintendo topics. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, it helps the video out a lot, and if you want to follow me on Twitter and help me reach my goal of 1,000 followers, you can follow me at roborob93. Without further delay, let's talk about Nintendo's big plan. So the September Nintendo Direct has come and passed, and we finally have some clue as to where Nintendo is going with the Nintendo Switch for the rest of 2022 and the first half of 2023. Right now, as far as we know, the big Nintendo Switch games that are in 2023 are Pikmin 4 and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 Tears of the Kingdom. There are of course indie games and third-party games like the Mega Man Collection or the Persona games, but as far as big Nintendo Switch games go, that is what we have. The September Nintendo Direct fleshed out the rest of 2022 as well as giving us some release dates and new games like the new Zelda game and Pikmin 4. But it didn't flesh out the first half of 2023 completely. The months leading up to Breath of the Wild 2 and after are just completely a mystery to us. We're pretty much in the dark. Aside from Fire Emblem Engage and the Kirby remake, of course. These two games will flesh out the first part of 2023, but other than that, it is pretty much a mystery. A mystery that can be solved by the first Nintendo Direct in 2023. Now, when is that Nintendo Direct, you may be asking? Well, if my predictions on when we could see the next Nintendo Direct and those being right in the past couple times have taught me anything, it's that you can look at Nintendo's past and predict their future. Usually anyway. Sometimes they throw a curveball and sometimes it's not exact, but pretty much that's how you can expect Nintendo news and new Nintendo Switch games to be revealed. We did this when we tried to figure out Nintendo's plan pre-September Nintendo Direct, and we did this pre-June time as well, and as we know, the more Nintendo reveals, the more we can predict about their future. This better helps us understand Nintendo's big plan, so let's do the same thing. Last year's Nintendo Direct was around this time and we got that September Nintendo Direct, so that was correct. So Nintendo is following the same marketing strategy as last year because they are doing a lot of the same things. So looking at the next event, it was an indie Nintendo Direct. There was an Animal Crossing Direct and a Smash Bros Nintendo Direct as well, but that probably won't happen for any of the games that are coming soon. Maybe we'll get a Pokemon Presents, and that's a maybe because that is coming out pretty soon as well. So I think we can expect an indie Nintendo Direct in October still, like we said last time, though part of me does wonder if we will get a third-party Nintendo Direct instead, or maybe both of them. One thing that I've noticed is that we know a lot of the third-party games like Mario Rabbids, Bayonetta 3, Harvestella, and so on. They could easily shine in a third-party Nintendo Direct. One last marketing push to push those games out that are coming out before January. I think the September Nintendo Direct had way too many RPG games and way too many games at the same time, and I think some games just didn't get that much marketing. So maybe a third-party Nintendo Direct can shine some focus on those games. I think that is a possibility that Nintendo could end up doing. We'll see if it happens. But more than likely, my bet is on that indie Nintendo Direct, which will happen just like last year. This will flesh out the rest of 2022 even more and give us a little bit more games in the first half of 2022. If Nintendo really wants to stuff the first half of 2022 without any tentpole Nintendo Switch games, they can do a partner showcase in December. As to when the next 40-minute Nintendo Direct will be, or whatever the big Nintendo Direct's runtime is gonna be, I think I fully expect that to be a February Nintendo Direct, and here's why. Quite simply, last year we had a February Nintendo Direct, and we know that Nintendo was following the same marketing pattern as last year's before, so more than likely we will get a February Nintendo Direct. This is exactly how I was able to predict a September Nintendo Direct 1 or 2 months before that Direct and before any rumors or Nintendo insiders said anything, and that's how you can do it too. Just look at what they did in the past. And don't worry, for those wondering when we're gonna have that huge Breath of the Wild gameplay showcase, I'm gonna do the same thing, but it's gonna be a little bit different, and that's gonna be later in the video. So once all those games that were announced at the September Nintendo Direct have come and passed, then you have to wonder, what about the rest of the first half of 2022? or correction, 2023, that's what I meant. Because remember, aside from Pikmin 3 and of course the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 Tears of the Kingdom, we don't really know what's going to happen in the first half of 2023. Yes, we do have the third-party games and all the games in between that, but as far as the big Nintendo Switch games go, we don't really know. And not only that, but we don't know what's after that month either, the second half of 2023 as well. This is pretty significant because last year Nintendo did a February Nintendo Direct, and then the next time we got a big Nintendo Direct was that June partner showcase. Remember, we didn't get that huge E3 Direct, so Nintendo didn't use a Nintendo Direct to set up the second half of 2023. So even if Nintendo does do a February Nintendo Direct and they set up the rest of 2022 with the first half, what about the second half? How are they going to set that up? They could do third-party Directs and indie Directs and Twitter drops, or they could do something else. Here's what I think they're going to do. More than likely, because the September Nintendo Direct didn't have a lot of huge reveals and didn't really set up a lot of the first half of 2022, I think what Nintendo is going to do is use that February Nintendo Direct in 2023 to set up the first half of 2023, yes, but also set the beginning of the second half of 2023 as well. When you mix in Twitter drops and the indie Nintendo Directs and third-party showcases, you can fill out the rest of those months leading up to the E3 Nintendo Direct to flesh out more of the upcoming months. Now let's jump a little bit before the E3 Nintendo Direct and let's talk about the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 Tears of the Kingdom. We know that this game is coming out in May. I don't think it's going to get delayed. I think May is the date that we're going to see it, and I think we're going to be playing Breath of the Wild 2 in May. So the question that needs to be asked, is Nintendo going to do the next Nintendo Switch or next console or whatever they're going to do alongside Breath of the Wild 2 to boost sales for that new Zelda game and also boost sales for that console? Well, here's the thing. I think there are two possibilities, and one is really likely and one is a lot less likely. Again, let's look at what Nintendo has been doing recently. Look at Splatoon 3, Xenoblade 3, and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. All games either had a Nintendo Direct showcase 1 month before the game, sometimes 2, and when I'm talking about the 1 or 2 months, I'm talking about the actual Switch edition. And they also had the Switch edition. Nintendo seems to be doing this for all the tentpole games. I think Xenoblade was the exception because while it is a huge game, I don't think it's the Mario and Zelda and Splatoon of their lineup. So I think that's why we didn't get a Xenoblade 3 edition Switch. Breath of the Wild 2, on the other hand, is one of those games. So if we were to use the Nintendo momentum theory, which is just understanding Nintendo's marketing, they will probably do one of two things. One, we'll probably get a reveal of a Switch Pro or a Switch 2 or whatever you're gonna call it, whatever Nintendo's gonna do with that at a February Nintendo Direct. And then that will release alongside Breath of the Wild 2. Now it's my belief that there is a very small slim chance that this could happen. I think because the Nintendo Switch is still selling so well, games are still breaking records, I think Nintendo doesn't want to do that yet. I think what Nintendo is gonna do is exactly what they did with Splatoon and Pokemon. We are gonna get a Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 Tears of the Kingdom Nintendo Switch edition. More than likely that will be revealed at a February Nintendo Direct and released 1 month before that game. Now don't get me wrong, we could see a Twitter drop for that or a random drop on their Nintendo channel just like the Splatoon game, but one of the two will happen. In the end, we're gonna get a Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 edition is what I'm trying to say. The release date will probably be 1 or 2 weeks before, just like Splatoon 3. And then 1 month before Breath of the Wild 2 in April, we will more than likely get that huge gameplay reveal at a separate Direct. Just like the Xenoblade 3 Direct, just like the Splatoon Direct, and just like all the Metroid marketing. And then leading up to that, we'll get a whole bunch of trailers and news and all the great stuff that we got with Splatoon 3 and the other games, but just for Breath of the Wild 2. But then you get to the edge of the abyss. You get to that edge where there's just nothing beyond it. Well, I think on the edge of the abyss there is one game there, one lonely game in the darkness. One lonely game, and that is Pikmin 4. And the reason why I think Pikmin 4 is going to come out after Breath of the Wild 2 and not before is because they didn't give us an exact release date. I think they would have said it's coming out in January or February or the next month after that. I don't think that they would give us an exact release date if it wasn't going to be in the later half of 2023. Well, remember that February Nintendo Direct, the first Nintendo Direct of 2023? Well, I think Nintendo is definitely going to set some games up for that time. I think we can get a new Mario or a new Donkey Kong game or a Star Fox or something in there. Some big tentpole game for the Nintendo Switch that Nintendo is going to use as a marketing point. 1 or 2 big Nintendo Switch games that they can use as marketing points to lead up to that E3 Nintendo Direct. When you add in third-party games and indie games, you can flesh that out and have a ton of news and content for the Nintendo Switch player base. And then during that E3 Nintendo Direct, I think what's going to happen is we're going to see Metroid Prime 4. And I think because E3 E3 is happening, as far as we know anyways, it could always be cancelled, I think Nintendo is gonna hold that big June Nintendo Direct. I think because the E3 Nintendo Direct wasn't happening, I think that's why Nintendo didn't have that June Nintendo Direct. But yeah, that's just my speculation on Nintendo's big plan. We'll see if it happens or not. Again, all speculation and all fun. The last big Nintendo Direct video that I did fairly well and was pretty spot on. A couple dates were off by a week or so, and some missing games unfortunately. But it was fairly accurate, so I'm hoping I'm accurate again. I'm gonna do another one of these, I don't know, maybe this will be like a series that we do, Nintendo's big plan. And every time we get further into the year, when we don't know what's going on, we'll try to speculate on what's gonna happen. But anyways, what do you guys think? Do you think this is Nintendo's plan for the next Nintendo Direct, Breath of the Wild 2 game reveals, and other stuff that we talked about? What do you think Nintendo's big plan is for the next year, year and a half? Tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. And if not, on your way out, make sure you subscribe for more videos and also have that notification bell on. And if you want to support the channel in any other way, there is my Patreon and Twitter account in the pinned comment if you're interested in those. Oh, and also have this donut if you're still sticking around for me rambling. Thanks for watching, guys, and remember, stay safe, stay charged, and have a good one.